and welcome to those of you who are attending here, this taster session. Here we've got Fernando, who's our final panelist. I should just introduce the whole session itself, and we'll get to know the panelists in just a moment. As I think Nathan said before, this session is being recorded, and we're recording it so that it can be used again in the future. Other people will get to know a bit about the Bloomsbury Network newly diagnosed course if they weren't able to attend the session, or if perhaps they got lost in the technical mix-up. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. We wanted to make sure this was a webinar rather than a Zoom meeting, because the point of this session is to let everybody know what the Bloomsbury Network newly diagnosed course is about. And people are able to listen here anonymously in a safe space and meet some of the people who we will be facilitating the course in the next few Saturdays, starting on the 25th of September. I should say now that if anything that we're talking about in the first part of the taster raises a question for you or suggestion, you can always just go to the bottom of the screen and use the Q&A function. You can type your question in there. It will be completely anonymous, and your name won't be visible to everyone else in the audience. We may not get to that right away, but we'll definitely leave a lot of time to answer people's questions at the end. So that's kind of the housekeeping of this session. I think we should say who we are and what this is all about. So some of you may have attended some of our virtual forums before. They're organized by the Bloomsbury Network. The Bloomsbury Network is a charity organized by patients from the Bloomsbury Clinic. So I am a patient. My name is Brian, and we from the network volunteer to organize extra events that are around the social and emotional life of being patients at the clinic, and we partner along with the peer support workers and the clinicians and others who work at the clinic. So we're really happy on this call to have volunteers from the network, like myself, and also members of the peer support team. Everyone who's here on the panel is someone who's living with HIV, and we are also people who will be facilitating the newly diagnosed course starting on the 25th of September. So maybe the five of us could go around and introduce ourselves. I think it'd be great to just say who you are in life, and maybe what is your relationship to the newly diagnosed course in the past? Have you been part of it? Have you facilitated it? And why did you want to start it up again? So I'll just quickly say, when I'm not here volunteering with the network, I work in the theater as a writer and a theater maker. I was diagnosed with HIV in 2013 at the Bloomsbury Clinic. And within that year, very soon, I joined the newly diagnosed course. I thought that I was someone who knew a lot about HIV even once I was diagnosed. And on one level in my head, I thought I was maybe more prepared to handle that diagnosis than some other people might have been. But actually, joining the course was such a huge life-changing experience for me. It was very emotional when I joined, actually. I joined alongside another person, a friend of mine. We'd both been diagnosed. And actually, as we unpacked our stories, we both found out that we had both contracted HIV from relationship with the same person. So there was an awful lot of emotion and issues to do with trust that were churning through me when I came first to the newly diagnosed course on that Saturday at the clinic. Angela, who's here on the call, was one of the peer support workers who was leading that at that time. And even though I felt that maybe I was equipped to handle my diagnosis, being on the course was such an important thing. I got to meet a whole range of people from so many different walks of life who are at different stages on their HIV journey. I can think about all the facts and the information that I learned about HIV, but actually it's more people's faces and the connections that we made that I remember most. And the most important thing was that after being on the course for those 3 Saturdays, I then wanted to become more involved in the life of the clinic and volunteer. So I joined the network. I volunteered at events. I helped the network to make a documentary about living with HIV a few years ago, which you can still see online. And I think all of those reasons are why it's been really important to me that the course continues, even if we're doing it online now rather than doing it in person. I'll hand over to the others. Maybe I'll start with Angela, since Angela is one of our peer support workers and was there with me when I did my course. Angela, talk to us about what the newly diagnosed course means to you.
Hi, I'm Angela, one of the peer support workers, and I've worked here for some time now, over 10 years. I have seen how the newly diagnosed course changed people's lives. People who are scared, people who are shy, people who have got their own issues about their sexuality, self-stigma. They've come out and made friends. They've come out and understood what it means to live a positive life with HIV. So to me, being part of the NDC has also changed me personally. It's like a family. You bond with people, from nowhere. You just find that you have similar things, similar stories, and you bond. So I find the NDC has got enough information to make somebody build their confidence in life and they move on. So I always tell clients, we should always see HIV as a small virus. We are bigger than that, and we can fight that and move on. That is all I can say. I'll hand over to somebody else.
Maybe we could hear from Fernando, also from the peer support team.
Hello, everybody. Oh my God, it's been a long time. I've been living with HIV for 30 years, 30. I was diagnosed in 1991. It was a very different time. It was more complicated than it is today to have HIV. It's been a long journey, but it's been a very positive one. I think that HIV gave me a lot of very, very good stuff. And most definitely, it has enriched my life. And I've met beautiful people along my journey. And I still meet beautiful people today because I work at the clinic as a senior peer support worker. I've also been involved in the newly diagnosed course. I co-facilitated with lovely Jason here the two newly diagnosed courses before the start of the pandemic. So, it was a face-to-face and it used to be a whole Saturday. And it's been a pleasure to co-facilitate the newly diagnosed course. It's so beautiful to see the journey that someone takes and, where they are when the course starts the first Saturday and what they've achieved by the end of it. We can see the build up in confidence. So yes, it's a beautiful journey, and it's humbling to go alongside that journey with you all. By all means, if you want to have a word with me or Angela, just pop into the clinic. We are there to support you. And I think I'm gonna hand over now to another lovely lady, to Jen.
Thanks, Fernando. I am Jen. I was diagnosed with HIV in May 2019, so fairly recent. It was really scary for me because I literally didn't know anybody else with the same diagnosis. I didn't know what it meant to be HIV positive in 2019. I didn't really feel like I had anybody to talk to. And then I found out about the newly diagnosed course. So I went on that in, I think, July 2019, so fairly soon after I was diagnosed. And it was an amazing opportunity for me to sit in the same room as people with the same diagnosis, fully understand what it meant to have HIV, and to find out information that is easily searchable, but to have it all in one place and to find out and learn that information with people in the same situation as me was really something that I couldn't put a price on. I will say that there was somebody on my course who had been diagnosed 10 years before, but hadn't come to terms with the diagnosis. So even though the course is called a newly diagnosed course, it really is for anybody who wants to come and learn more and help to, I suppose, come to terms with something which is really kind of a massive shock to the system. And the course itself really helped me in so many ways to feel more comfortable with the diagnosis, stigma generally, and the people that I met have become family in some kind of ways. We do social events and things like that. Obviously, there's no pressure at all for anybody doing the course, but really, I suppose the comfort that I felt from the course gave me a passion to spread the word, educate people. I've got a real passion to tackle stigma, because I think that's the main issue that we've got with HIV these days. So I've been volunteering with the Bloomsbury Network since earlier this year, and I'm really excited to be part of this newly revamped course, because I know for myself how much it helped me, but I could also see how much it helps other people as well. So it really is an honour and a privilege to now be involved and to hopefully help other people on the same journey. I'll pass over to Jason.
Thanks. So I'm Jason. I was diagnosed in 2014, I want to say, when I was a medical student at the medical school adjacent to the clinic. I, through the beauty of education, wasn't really that worried about HIV at the time. I emotionally struggled with it a bit, but I think nowhere near as much as I would have if I hadn't have already known about HIV. I went on the course anyway, even thinking that it wasn't going to do anything for me. But then meeting other people and seeing other people's journeys and experiences was actually really helpful for me, to help me process how I really felt. Because I think it was very easy for me to sort of deny that it was really affecting me because I knew everything. But I didn't really know anything about what it was like to go through such a tough transition. You know, I was quite young. And I think seeing particularly also other people who weren't so informed going through a sort of much more difficult transition, you know, worried about death even, was quite humbling. I then sort of immediately started volunteering. I quickly co-facilitated a couple of courses afterwards, beginning with just volunteering and overseeing, and then co-facilitating. And then it's sort of just snowballed since then, and I've been quite an active part of it since. I'm a big believer in the course because I'm a big believer in patient empowerment and patient education. I've seen and experienced firsthand what education can do to make a person's journey so much easier and so much smoother, and also make a person so much more confident and assured in managing their interactions in life, speaking to other people, and dealing with the tough challenges that you deal with, telling other people. It's so much easier when you're actually well informed. And I think that's why it's important for me to get this course going again. And it's not just for the newly diagnosed. We keep threatening to rename it, but just can't get around to choosing something. It's very much for people that just want to live better and to live more powerfully with HIV. And it's for anyone who wants to come on who feels like they could do better. Yeah.
That's beautifully put, Jason, for anyone who wants to live better and live more powerfully. And we will address that question of the name in the very last slide that we've got in a minute. But the person who we also want to hear from is Nathan, who you saw at the start. Just Nathan, who's also a member of the network and a volunteer. What's your connection and thought about the newly diagnosed course?
Oh, I can't recommend it highly enough. My story is quite similar to Brian's and to Jason's. I'm 47 and I was diagnosed with HIV in June 2014. No, that's a lie. 4 years ago, 2017. So I've just celebrated my 4th anniversary, if you like, and I, like Jason, felt that I was very well educated and well informed about all kinds of things, and I thought, you know what, something said to me, I won't have the hubris to think that I have nothing to learn. And I went along to the newly diagnosed course, and I found it utterly transformative in a way that I couldn't have anticipated, meeting people who were at very, very different stages in their journey of acceptance and their journey through their positive lives was incredibly eye-opening to me. There were people who were struggling in a way that I had never really comprehended before. There were people who were far more open and happy than I was, and I've always considered myself to be not emotionally affected by my diagnosis, but on some deep-seated level, so many of us carry stuff through the baggage of the 1980s, the baggage of all the TV campaigns, all the stuff that we've learned. It's your fault. It's you brought this on yourselves, which has been said to me a couple of times. All of that kind of stuff, which is so completely not true. In fact, when I came out, if you like, about my status on social media, and the 17-year-old daughter of a friend of mine said something very, very beautiful. She said, "The virus doesn't discriminate, people do." And that, wow, if only I had been that wise at that age. After the first day of the newly diagnosed course, which of course was in person back then, I went home and I cried and I cried and I cried. And it was the first time that I had processed those emotions. It was the first time I had cried, and they weren't my emotions, it felt. I was crying for the people whose situations I had seen who were so much worse than me. But of course, underneath it all, I was crying. I was grieving for the loss of my negative life in some way. And the just being part of this course was able to make me unlock some emotions that I didn't even know I was feeling, and that to me has really, really set me up. I've always kept myself informed, and I'm so proud to be able to volunteer for the network, and I do so very gladly, because I know that I'm very happily open about my status, and a lot of people are not and can't be for various reasons. So I feel that I can do my bit to speak up on their behalf. But for anyone who is thinking, "Oh, I don't know if it's for me," you're here tonight. That's the first step. I can guarantee you, whatever your knowledge status is about the subject, there will be something from it that you'll take away that you didn't expect.
Thank you, Nathan, and thank you, everybody. I think we can already see, just even within this room here, so many different stories and experiences, and a theme that coming to terms dealing with living powerfully with HIV is not just about learning the information about what HIV does in your life, but it's about living the experiences, living the emotions, and connecting with others. I want to remind everyone that if anything that we've said has raised any questions, you should, feel free to put those in the Q&A function. We will get to those. I want to show a few slides that will explain and give you a tiny taster of what the course, how it will be structured and what it has in store. We may have just a little bit, a tiny preview of some of the types of activities we'll do as well. So I'm gonna, oh, Nathan, I need you to enable the screen sharing again, because I think maybe when we stopped it, it disabled that.
All done, you should be able to do that.
Okay, great. So here are the slides. So the basic format, this course used to be held online, and obviously, as with so many things in our lives, we're now doing it virtually. We really tried to rethink how the course operates so that it can feel hopefully personal in a new way and not just like another Zoom meeting. It does have the benefit of people from outside of London, of course, who can't make it into the clinic, can call in. It's going to be held across 3 Saturdays, and it will be on a private Zoom account and completely confidential and password protected. So although we're on a webinar now, where audience members have their cameras off, because so much of the course is about connecting with other people, it will be password protected. All of the conversations will be confidential, and we will ask and encourage everyone who joins the course to come with us for those 3 weeks, to have their cameras on and to engage as much as people feel comfortable to, but so that everybody is speaking to a face of another person. The sessions will last approximately 2 hours and 15 minutes each time, with a break so that we're not staring at our screens for that entire time, from 11 a.m. to 2:15. And as we said before, all the facilitators, you're looking at them here right now, the faces of these people who are people living with HIV, all of us, volunteers, patients at the clinic from the network, as well as Fernando and Angela, our peer support workers. So that's the kind of basics of how everything will be organized. Of course, you may have some questions which we can address later on. What are some of the things that we'll talk about across those 3 days? We will carry on the stories that the 5 of us have already begun to speak about, which is how we deal with the initial shock to the system of our diagnosis, learning that we have HIV. We will talk about questions about all the risks of transmission. And then, of course, the wonderful good news about undetectability and what that means in terms of us being able to trust that we can't pass HIV on. We will have a very informative session with our very own medical doctor, Dr. Jason, telling us about how our medication works. I definitely need to study those slides because although I take it religiously, I'm not sure I understand all the difference of the protease inhibitors and everything, but Jason will be able to answer every question we have about that. We'll talk about what it means to disclose your status to others, when you choose to do that, when you might not choose to do that, ways that we've done it, how you might feel more comfortable doing that when you choose to do it. We'll talk about HIV in the law, how what are your rights in relation to the law, and so that you can feel more comfortable knowing them. We will talk in depth about stigma, the stigma that we, as Jen has mentioned, as Fernando cares about a lot. We'll talk about what that means in our lives, how we can overcome self-stigma as well as the stigma of society. And I think one of the most important topics, we're really going to emphasize well-being. As Jason said, living better, living powerfully beyond our diagnosis. And this is something that's not just something that gets solved with like one bit of information, but it's I think we can all attest it's like a constant process that sort of keeps going, learning how to live well. During the course, you will, if you join us, get to know all of the members of the group. I know that when we did the course in person, we became like a little bit of a family, going for lunches and things like that in the middle of the day during the course. We can't do that exactly, but we'll do our best to make it very personal. We promise that although there might be lots of emotional stories that are brought up, we will keep changing up the tone with icebreakers and games and shifting of kind of activities so that it doesn't feel like it's just a slog through emotional stories at all times. But we will create a safe space where everyone in the group can engage to whatever level they feel comfortable, and nobody will be asked to share anything that they don't feel comfortable sharing. But we hope that we can create a safe and confidential environment where you can share and connect, as well as ask any questions that you have about living with HIV. There's a whole range of experience amongst the facilitators and the other people in the room, so that we can then create bonds that will hopefully carry on past the course. You can learn about opportunities to participate in socials that the network operates, and also maybe, hopefully, to join us volunteering as Jen and Jason and Nathan and myself have. And of course, we also have a whole range of other resources and organizations that are available to help other people outside of the clinic with HIV. So I thought we could just do a tiny taster before we take any questions so that people can get a feel of the kinds of activities that we may do in the course. Obviously, we're going to have open conversations about all those topics, very non-judgmental. We're going to share a lot of facts. There will be slides. There'll be chances to ask questions. And you'll gain a lot of tips and advice that are based on our personal lived experience. But we'll have quizzes and we'll have games. So I thought maybe we could do a tiny bit of a game, okay? Which involves a little bit of education and a little bit of a guessing game. So again, we don't want to give away all the content of the course if you're coming on the 25th, but this is just a teaser. So here we've got 5 activities: getting a tattoo, touching a bleeding wound, sharing a razor, breastfeeding, or sharing a cup, a drink with someone. Now, assuming that one person in this activity is living with HIV but is not yet on effective antiretroviral medication, can you rank the risk factor from 1 to 10 of transmitting HIV in these ways? Which, just have a think, everybody. Which one of these, so assuming that someone was not on their ARV medication, which of these would have the highest rate of transmission, which would have the lowest? If people, I don't know, people can put their guesses in the chat if they feel like it. I'm going to reveal the answers in a moment.
Right, this is terrifying because I've been through the course and I feel I should know the answer to this confidently, but this is just proving to me how much I've probably forgotten, and I'm not sure I would be 100% confident to put forward my idea.
Okay, well, people may have their answers in their head. People may want to type something into the chat, I'm not sure. But I'm about to reveal the answer, so make your final decisions. So here are, based on a risk, on a sort of scale of 1 to 10 of the risk factor. Jason might have to explain to us how this was calculated, but you can see that 4 out of these 5 activities have very, very low risk of transmitting HIV. Sharing a cup, absolutely 0 risk. I think when I first joined the course, I would not have guessed actually that breastfeeding was the highest of those risks, but obviously breast milk is one of the bodily fluids that does. If HIV is present at higher than undetectable levels, it can pass on the virus. However, whether or not you got these answers right, the good news for everybody, the great news, in fact, is this. If we are undetectable, if you are taking your antiretroviral medications, the risk for all of these activities and for every activity is 0 in terms of transmitting HIV. So that's one of the examples of the kinds of bits of information that we may give you, along with a lot more details. I see we had a guess in the chat. Someone put in the Q&A of a tattoo. So it just goes to show Nathan didn't know, some of the other people didn't know, but in some sense, we don't have to worry about this because of the beauty of U equals U, undetectability being untransmissible. I thought maybe before we go into any questions from anyone else, as an example of just kind of starting discussions in the kind of way that we might do on the course, kind of giving people prompts. I thought we could use this internet meme, how it started and how it's going. Yeah, we've kind of already did that. People may have seen that on Twitter and things like that as a joke, but thinking about our experience, the 5 or 6 of us here on the call about living with HIV, how we felt about something in the beginning and how we feel about it now. So if we want to go around maybe in one word, if we think about the prospect of telling other people our HIV status, how did we feel about it back then? How do we feel about it now? Maybe I'll begin, and then anyone on the panel who feels like they want to jump in can do that. So for me, I think if I think about sharing my status back then, I thought close friends only. And now I think almost the whole world can know. Not quite, but almost the whole world. Anybody else want to answer that? Jen, go ahead.
I would say then I was terrified because I didn't know what the reaction from other people would be. Now, I know you said one word, but kind of proud to be educational. So I will tell anybody who has the time to listen to me educate them. So yeah, I feel, yeah, just leave it there.
Anybody else want to jump in on that one?
Can I say something?
Yeah, Fernando.
I think it's a confidence thing. I think it's a build-up of confidence. It doesn't happen overnight. Maybe you can support me with that one because it's something that it's still painful. For a lot of people, not for me, but for a lot of people, it's still very painful. But it's about building yourself the confidence. For me, I kind of came out publicly because I've done an interview in Portugal, and to what equals to the BBC here, the public broadcaster. So it was quite traumatic, the fallout of it. But in a way, it was wonderful because I didn't have to come out again. So you know what I mean. But anyway, in 1996, I took the decision that I don't want my status to hold me back. I don't want my status to be a source of shame. I don't want my status to be something that people can use against me. And I had to get rid of that inside of my head, you know. And once I did that, to be honest with you, at the moment, I don't have a problem at all to tell people about my status. You know, on the contrary, I think telling people about my status just open up conversations that are so interesting, you know, because we have this idea that only us live with HIV. But once you come out, you know, I'm just going to tell this little anecdote. I was on holidays in Vienna, and it was my birthday, and I went to this gay cafe in Vienna, and I sat down, and there was a gay guy with a dog next to me, and I started playing with the dog, and then we ended up sitting together in the same table and talking about our lives. And you know, he asked me, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a peer support worker. I work in HIV and sexual health." And I said to him, "By the way, I live with HIV for the past 30 years." And the guy just, you know, gave me a wonderful smile. And he said, "You know what? Me too. I've been living with HIV for the past 15, you know." And right there and then, there was such a connection between us because of our shared status, you know. So, yeah, but I understand that for some people, it's really difficult. And I understand that for some people, they had really bad reactions when disclosing their status, you know. So, yeah. But that's me. Thank you.
We can hear from other people if they want to jump in on this one, or there's some other prompts as well. Nathan, did you want to go?
Yeah, disclosure is something that's really close to my heart. It's very, very strange. I knew right from the beginning of my positive journey. The day I got diagnosed, I was diagnosed oddly by my GP. I've been going to sexual health clinics all my life as a sexually active adult gay man, and I got diagnosed at my GP surgery. And I was walking away from there with my husband, and we were on our way to go to an HIV clinic so that I could register for care. And I said to my husband that day, the first thing I said when we left the building was, "I'm not going back into another closet for anybody." And that was something that was really, really important to me. How could I be the proud out gay man that I have always been, being very, very open and honest about who I am, if I then suddenly started hiding a very important part of who I am? Now, of course, that's not in any way a judgment on people who aren't able, for whatever reason, to be as open as that, but that was my journey. And over the next 6 months, I spent time, first of all, telling the people who were closest to me, my close family and friends, in person, face to face, so that I could look them in the eye and say to them, "I have been diagnosed with HIV. I am well, and I will continue to be well, and here's why." And I was able to give them the facts that I had learned about U equals U and about treatment and all of that, so that I could reassure people behind the sting of the news that I had just given them. I learned very quickly that the closer I am to somebody, the more it hurts to tell them. The harder that burden of pain is, because you know that you're giving somebody news which is potentially going to cause them worry and concern. But if you can back it up with information, that it becomes a lot easier for them and for you. I learned that knowledge is power, and the more I learn, there's nowhere for there's no dark corners for the monsters to hide if you switch all the lights on with information. And then I spoke to people on the telephone and through messages and through emails, and then I went very public on social media, and I was talking about disclosure in one of the live forums we did a couple of years ago before the pandemic. And I was less than a year into my HIV journey at the time, but I had, on the day I went public on social media, I broadcast my status to over 20,000 people that day. And I have never felt so free. I have never felt so liberated, and I have never felt so loved from the answers, the responses that came back. I was giving people an opportunity to love me fully and to love me completely as I am. And it was quite remarkable. So what I always like to round up this kind of talk with is saying that while my status is nobody else's business if I choose it not to be, it's not my dirty little secret either.
Mm-hmm. And thank you, Nathan, for that. And I'm going to move on to the next prompt.
Can I add a quick
little addend
to that, Brian? Part of the reason that I do this that I do volunteering and that I am open about my status, and I do educate people, is because I understand that other people aren't like that, and I'm in a very small minority, and I feel confident about educating people in how I feel about my diagnosis. But I understand that most people, or a lot of people, aren't like that. So I like to, this is why I'm here, because I've got the confidence and that in the education, and that's why I want to help people who aren't maybe as confident as we are about our statuses.
Absolutely. Yeah. Not everyone's circumstances are the same, or maybe not everyone's just not interested in doing that, and it's going to be a journey for everybody.
Absolutely, everyone's different.
If we could just think about then and now, maybe keeping it to one word or a phrase, just to kind of get our brains going, thinking about dating and relationships, or we could say families or partners and HIV. How did you feel about it back then? How do you feel about it now? This is a big one. I think I would say I thought it would be incredibly difficult. I thought maybe I would only get with other people who had the same status as me. And the way that I feel now is I feel completely liberated and open, and surprised at how many people who've been my partners since my diagnosis have been very accepting. Anybody else wanna take that one or build on it? Angela?
Oh, hold on. Oh, my screen is gone. No. My screen has gone off.
We can see you, Angela.
The question is about telling other people your status. You have to choose whom to tell. I live in a community that is very judgmental. However much you educate, you feel that you've done your bit as a peer support worker. Sometimes I think you're talking to a brick wall. Most times that's how I feel. But again, it's how comfortable you feel in educating people. There are times when you feel like, do I need to? Other times you just feel like, no, I think I have to. Let me give them information. Let them learn something. Because Africa was hit with HIV. I'm from Uganda, and it was really hit bad, and it's still rising. HIV is still rising in Uganda. But it is tough. When you find there is a lot of ignorance, even with people you thought would know much, people who've been affected within the family, you feel that they would know much, they would understand, but there's still stigma. So it's how you wish things could change and people would learn, but then sometimes you sit and think, do I need to go out and sacrifice my family, sacrifice my children? So there are so many ifs and buts and yes and no's. It's not a blank curtain to go out and say and think everything will be fine. I am happy to hear Jane, Fernando, and all of you talk about your positive the positive feedback you're giving. But some of my clients have had negative feedback. I can give you an example. I had a student nurse, and this is recent because we are in September, and this was in May. And I thought he knew everything. Here he is, basically shadowing everybody in the clinic. And I thought, okay, let me ask and find out how he feels about HIV. And he said, I know everything. And he knew everything sincerely. On the fingertips. I thought, what if you fall in love with somebody and, you love that person, you feel this is the person to marry. And then, boom, she tells you that she's HIV positive. He said, I'll run mouth. I won't marry her. So that is how I feel although we are talking to people, how deep is this message getting through? How deep? If you can tell me you have all this information, you know it, and yet you still discriminate, what are we missing? Is there something we're missing to educate these people? So dating, relationships, and HIV, there is still a struggle within my community, and I don't think it's only my community. I think it's world all over. So it's telling or not telling. Sometimes I always say, I am undetectable. I always tell my friends, I'm undetectable. I know you equals you. Do I need to tell? Why is it that it's my responsibility to say, to tell, when I don't know the other person where they've been? You know, I always say, turn over and say, I need to protect myself because I don't know where that person has been. You know, I know myself, I know what I have, and I know I am fine, I know I'm safe. Do I know where that person has been? That is all I can say. Sorry. No.
Right. And I think Angela raises important points that when we have the course itself, these questions of disclosure, and sometimes when you don't want to disclose and when you feel that it's not your job to educate everybody else, that's equally valid, and we'll have the time to talk about that with everybody and answer everybody's questions from all the experiences we've had in the room. Given the time that we've got, I'm just going to show this last prompt to think about then and now, whether we had any anxieties and worries about the future and how we're feeling now. I'll say one thing. I remember a slide from the time that I went to the newly diagnosed course that showed that people who are living with HIV in the UK on treatment have actually longer life expectancy than the general population. And so I think a lot of my worries that I had at that time, when I joined the newly diagnosed course, I wasn't even on medication. They used to make us wait longer in those days before they put you on it. And I think I felt like the virus was going around inside of me. But now when I think about that life expectancy, I worry about a lot of things in the future, but I don't really think HIV is usually one of them. Anybody else wanna jump in on that prompt?
Very quickly, I was just going to say, almost echoing what you've just said, I have many, many anxieties and worries about my future, but HIV is not one of them.
Anybody else?
I worry
Technically, that study
about
was
the
done.
climate. I worry deeply about the climate. The economy. I don't worry about HIV at all. When I was diagnosed 30 years ago, it was a different story because it was a death sentence at the time, and there was only one pill that wasn't even developed for HIV. It was developed for cancer, called AZT. And they decided to throw it at people living with HIV, thinking that it could be a game changer. And it was for people like me, it was, So back then it was about, am I going to die tomorrow? Am I going to die in 6 months' time? Am I going to die next year? I mean, I've learned not to plan in those early days. I've learned not to make any plans because I didn't know if I was going to survive, and here I am 30 years later. So for me now it's for me now it's about other stuff that has nothing to do with HIV.
Jason, I think you were saying something as well.
Oh, I was just going to say, technically, the study on life expectancy was done on the Swiss population, not British.
Oh God! What? So now I have to move to Switzerland to have a higher life expectancy?
No, I mean, I'm sure it probably holds true over a lot of Western white nations.
For anyone who may be unsure of what we mean by that, the reason is not because HIV helps us live longer, it's just that if we are connected to care and we are going for our checkups and making sure that we keep ourselves healthy and we stay connected to care, then things are likely to be picked up in us that might happen that are completely unconnected to HIV, that will make sure that we get looked after rather than having these things go unnoticed. So I believe that to be the sort of the foundation of that study, and that's useful information for us all, I think.
I have heard HIV being referred to as a NHS gold card, because if something does happen to us that's serious, then we've got that care there. We've got that care and attention, so it does put us in a in a priority position, I suppose.
Have we got
It's a nice way to think about it. Everybody, because I see the time is approaching and I want to make sure if there are any questions we get to, I'm just going to say, it was said earlier that although this has always been called the NDC, the newly diagnosed course, this is not just for people who have been diagnosed recently. As Jason said, it's for anyone who wants to live better and live well. We have had a proposal within the last couple of days that instead of the newly diagnosed course, Nathan has come up with what I personally think is a brilliant name, which is the Beyond Diagnosis course, the BDC, which could be for anyone on that journey, because a beyond, as Angela is saying, that beyond journey just doesn't end after 3 Saturdays or even after 10 years, 30 years. It's something that kind of keeps cycling through. So we really wanted to make sure that the course could continue even if people aren't coming into the clinic as much anymore, and that's why we wanted to do it online. We're able to stay on here for a little while longer if people have questions, or indeed if you've got any other suggestions about things that you want to be part of the course. Feel free to put those into the Q&A function or to put them into the chat, or if anything that any of the panelists have said has raised a question for you, do that. But wrapping up on our part, you've gotten a chance to hear from each of us. We are the people who have created this this Beyond Diagnosis course. We're the people who will be facilitating it on each of the 3 weeks. And if you think it might be a good course for you, or you know someone who might benefit from it, we certainly hope you will join us. As Nathan has just put in the chat, if you would like to join, email admin@bloomsburynetwork.co.uk. It will not be a webinar in the way that everything was this time. It will be a secure Zoom meeting with a password that everybody will kind of be in a private conversation all together. And it will not just be the facilitators talking. In fact, we'll be asking questions that will hopefully prompt you to share your experiences and share with one another.